Hello everyone, I'm Melissa Steinour. Thank you for joining me here today. Over the last couple of weeks, we have been talking about the story of Joseph in the Bible. And we watched as Joseph's very jealous brothers threw him at 17 years old into an empty pit or an empty cistern, a well. And they pulled him out later and sold him to Midianite traders for money. We watched as Joseph was taken to Egypt by those Midianite traders, and he was put on the auction block there at Egypt and bid on like an animal. And he was actually purchased by Potiphar, who was a high officer of Pharaoh the king, and Joseph became a slave. Later, we watched as Potiphar's wife framed Joseph for a crime that he did not commit, and an innocent Joseph went to prison. In prison, we watched as Joseph met the cupbearer and the baker who worked for the king. Somehow they wound up in prison. And while they were in there, they had dreams. And Joseph was able to interpret those dreams, and those dreams came true. That led 2 years later to him being able to interpret the king's disturbing dreams. From there, the king named him second in command in all of Egypt. And last week we watched as his brothers traveled during the famine from the land of Canaan to Egypt to buy food from Joseph. And we watched as Joseph displayed forgiveness and kindness and care to his brothers. This is really the last week that we're going to talk about the story of Joseph, and it is my favorite lesson out of the entire story. And the point for this week's lesson is that God always has a plan. We find Jacob has died, who is Joseph's father, and the brothers are now getting very concerned that Joseph is finally going to get even with them because their father has passed away. And we hear Joseph's very famous words out of Genesis chapter 50, verse 19, when he says to his brothers, "Don't be afraid of me. Am I God that I can punish you? You intended to harm me, but God intended it all for good, and he brought me to this position so I could save the lives of many people." You know, Joseph had a good understanding of something that would really be good for us to understand as we walk through life, because you see, sometimes life isn't fair. Sometimes really, really bad and ugly things happen to us. Sometimes it's of our own doing. Sometimes it's what others do to us, like it was for Joseph. And sometimes it is just that life is unfair. You know, life for the Christian is not going to be perfect until the day we see Jesus face to face. But Joseph understood that no matter what we go through in life, God always has a plan. And knowing that as you face situations brings such a comfort and such a peace, because we know that no matter what we face in this life, even if it came from the hands of the enemy of our soul, God has a way of taking that situation and working it out for our good. You know, Jeremiah 29:11 is a very famous verse, and it says, "For I know the plans that I have for you, says the Lord. They are plans for good and not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope." And then he goes a little bit further and he says, in those days when you face those problems, when you pray, I will listen. You know, we really don't know what we will face in this life. I mean, from one day to the next, sometimes it's like roller coaster rides. We go through good seasons and we go through really hard seasons. But we can trust in the fact that the Bible tells us that God will never leave us and he will never forsake us, no matter what we are going through. Our job is to trust him, to trust that he has a plan, to trust that he has a way to take the really ugly situations in our life and turn them around and bring good from them. I love the verse in Proverbs. It's chapter 3, verses 5 through 6. It says to trust in the Lord with all of your heart, to lean not on your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. So this week, I just want to encourage you, no matter what you are facing, no matter if it came from your own doing, someone else did it to you, or the enemy of your soul has come after you, no matter what it is that you are facing, put it in God's hands. Trust that he's never going to leave you, that he's never going to forsake you, that he holds you in the palm of his hand, that you are the apple of his eye, that he cares about you, that he will direct your paths, and that he will ultimately bring good out of every bad situation that you could ever face. So share this with those around you, and I will talk to you again next week.